And Diana DuPont is going to talk to us today about the project that she led to actually bring that mural from the home where it was to the Santa Barbara Museum. And it was a project that was begun in 1997 and continued until 2002. So yet another complex, large, long-term project of Siqueiros. So I'd just like to introduce Diana. She is a writer and curator, and she was the project director for the Portrait of Mexico Today project at Santa Barbara Museum of Art. She has worked on a lot of things when she was at Santa Barbara Museum. One of her other big projects was on Tamayo. And since then, she's gone on to do other things, and she's now writing, and her most recent book is You Can't Eat Dirt, the Leading America's First All-Women Tribal Council and How We Changed Palm Springs, was released earlier this year. It's a wonderful read. So if you want to welcome Diana, would be pleased.
Well, first, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for that welcome, and thank you, Leslie, for inviting me to be a part of this wonderful symposium on the occasion of your contemporary unveiling of Siqueiros' América Tropical. What an amazing feat of conservation and cooperation between the City of Los Angeles and the GCI that has preserved this landmark artwork. What I would like to do today is to share with you the dramatic story of how and why we moved Siqueiros' third and final Los Angeles mural from a private home in the Pacific Palisades to the Santa Barbara Museum of Art. Accomplished a decade ago now, this mammoth and at times controversial undertaking was no easy task, involving many different interests and requiring many different kinds of professional expertise. In 1932, Hollywood film director Dudley Murphy fulfilled his dream of living by the sea. That year, he purchased a Monterey-style home set in a lemon grove and perched on the mountains above the Pacific Ocean. A mere stone's throw from where we all sit today, this home was built by architect John Byers in the mid to late 1920s in the then young and growing coastal community of the Pacific Palisades. This is the aerial view of the subject house. You can see that indeed, this is Amalfi Drive. It really was the only house on Amalfi Drive at the time, set among the lemon groves, and there really wasn't another structure within a quarter mile. Really quite an undeveloped area at the time. The mural Portrait of Mexico Today was created in a garden portico of this house, painted there by Siqueiros in 1932, and here I'm showing you the garden portico. Now you have to picture this. The compound is a square compound. So the garden portico is facing Amalfi Street or Drive, but the outside is just white stucco with landscaping in front. And so you see the mural there. In the middle is this courtyard, landscaped courtyard, and then you see this is the facade of the house. And so just imagine you walked in that wrought iron gate, you walk down these few steps along this brick pathway to this front door, to the wooden front door. So you can just imagine this is the compound. Siqueiros offered to paint the mural for Murphy as a gesture of gratitude for the kind assistance that the filmmaker had offered him during his political exile in Los Angeles. Murphy had helped to generate sales of the artist's work to some of the biggest movie stars and movie makers of the day, and had provided him accommodations at his Amalfi Drive home. And here I'm going to show you an image of Siqueiros. You've seen this in earlier presentations, but this just places him again in context at the home after he had completed the mural in 1932. Murphy proudly lived with his Siqueiros mural until 1946, when he sold his Pacific Palisades home that year. He urged the new owners neither neglect nor destroy it. He realized that Siqueiros' controversial politics and the work's provocative subject matter might jeopardize its very existence. This concern was justified, given that the new stewards of the property happened to be, in a strange twist of history, J.P. Morgan's nephew, whose famous uncle is critically portrayed in the mural. And here I'm showing you an image of a detail from the mural that shows a profile of the famous American financier J.P. Morgan. In his unpublished autobiography, Murphy states that, quote, "For a while, he, J.P. Morgan's nephew, and his wife threatened to paint out the mural. I had told them how foolish it would be to destroy a work of art," end quote. Since its earliest days then, one could argue that Siqueiros' portrait of Mexico today existed in a certain state of peril. Ensconced in a private home and subject to all the rights and privileges of individual landowners with their various political predilections and personal fancies, the mural could be ignored, mistreated, or even demolished. Siqueiros himself clearly recognized the dangers and was eager to protect his work. In 1959, as a form of insurance, he reached out to the then owners of his sole Los Angeles mural that remained unharmed and gave them a copy of his recent monograph, inscribed, quote, "For Mr. and Mrs. Willard Coe, dear guardians of my mural in your California home, D.A. Siqueiros," end quote. The potential vagaries that compelled Siqueiros to encourage the Coes in their commitment to his only intact mural in Southern California were the very uncertainties that became a driving force behind the Santa Barbara Museum of Art's Siqueiros mural project. Fast forward to late 1997, when as curator of modern and contemporary art at the Santa Barbara Museum of Art, I am contacted by an intermediary of the family then living in the Amalfi Drive home. The representative inquires if there might be an interest in the mural as a donation, given the museum's commitment to Latin American art, including modern Mexican art, and including the work of Siqueiros, whose canvases and works on paper were already in the permanent collection and whose easel paintings of the 1930s had been exhibited earlier that year in 1997 in a monographic exhibition at the museum. Intrigued by this gift prospect, I then visit the potential donors in early 1998, and this is what I saw. This is the garden portico portion of the compound. Now, that remains, as you saw it in that earlier slide. What is different, what's dramatically different here is the landscaping. The courtyard had been changed. The owners had engaged landscape designer Nancy Gosley Power to redesign the courtyard. And the big change is that the uniform ground cover had been removed and euphorbia and other cacti had been put in place. And the most dramatic feature is the water element, the fountain that's coming down and collecting here. Immediately realizing that this would be an extraordinary opportunity for the museum, for Santa Barbara community, and beyond, I consult with Director Robert Frankel. Before any further action is taken, we seek to determine if all reasonable efforts have been made to retain the mural in Los Angeles and placed in a local institution. Once satisfied that good faith attempts had been made in this vein and proved unsuccessful, we began working with the mural's owners on the details of a donation. At the same time, we established the following actions list. 1, prepare an art historical analysis of the work. 2, make a current condition assessment. And 3, create a viability or conduct a viability study, including budget parameters for deinstalling and reinstalling the mural in Santa Barbara. Schiffer Goldman, a world authority on Siqueiros, as we all know and love, writes a scholarly assessment of the mural. In her review, she states, quote, housing this mural is equivalent to encountering and restoring to its proper phase and place an important early Cézanne or a Picasso of a large size. Your proposal to preserve this work and make it available to the public for the first time in some 60+ years is not only logical, but visionary, end quote. The highly respected conservation firm of Wharton and Griswold Associates prepares a current condition assessment. Team leaders for this review state in their final report, quote, "The overall condition of the mural seems to be fairly stable, with no significant losses or obvious structural damage. The mural walls appear to be sound, and the painted surface is generally in good condition," end quote. Even though the conservators conclude that the mural is sufficiently stable to be moved, they make a strong argument for site specificity. They recommend that the artwork not be moved at all. Rather, it should remain in its original location. While details of the mural gift are discussed further, the museum seeks a second opinion. Expert wall paintings conservator Perry Houston of Houston and Associates Fort Worth is engaged in fall 1999. Houston and a team of senior art conservators, including Andrea Rota and Scott Haskins, also conclude that the mural is stable enough to be moved if all proper precautions are taken. In his initial report submitted February 2000, Houston recommends 3 possible methods for moving the mural. One is intact, the other is in 2 sections, and the other is in 3 sections, not at all like what Nestor had to deal with. Quote, the field of and excuse me for diverting there a little bit. He also advises the museum on the complex issue of site specificity and writes in his initial report, quote, the field of conservation is in the business of preserving artistic and historic works. Some conservators feel that responsibility extends to every aspect of the object, including its original location. Other conservators feel that this point of view may leave the treatment of these objects at the mercy of unqualified practitioners and understand that if the decision beyond their influence and control has been made to move an object, they should provide as professional a service as possible, end quote. The museum deliberates at length on this complex and critical issue of site specificity. Due diligence is conducted on many fronts, including an investigation of inquiring the entire Pacific Palisades compound and operating it as a satellite facility of the museum. Faced with the impossibility of this and other extreme options, the museum understands and appreciates the argument for leaving the mural as is, but it remains committed to preserving the work and making it available to the public, even if that mission requires its relocation. The overriding caveat was that the mural would not be moved if it were deemed unsafe. There could be no damage to it in the process. Upon the advice of experts that the mural could be securely transported, the museum makes the final decision to proceed with the project. The mural is officially offered and accepted as a donation, and as part of the arrangement, the museum agrees to cover all expenses for work relating to conserving and moving the mural and for returning the Pacific Palisades compound to its exact appearance before the project began. Designated chief conservator for the project, Houston works with the museum to assemble the required multidisciplinary expertise. At the same time, he continues his assessment of how best to move the mural. By late summer, he determines that transporting it in even a few sections is unsafe. And so he proposes moving the approximately 34-foot-long, 10-foot-high, and 10-foot-deep structure intact, however, without its foundation. But after discovering that portions of the foundation had been painted on, he realizes that there is only one responsible and safe way to move the mural, and that is intact and with its foundation. In spring-summer 2000, the first conservation treatment phase begins in the Pacific Palisades. Steps include cleaning the mural, consolidating and securing the paint, and applying an appropriate facing. For safety reasons, facing the mural is considered mandatory, and several approaches are analyzed. Houston, water or solvent-based options are ruled out because Houston and his team discovers that the mural's solubility varies across its surface. The conservators then test a previously untried substance, cyclododecane, which is a wax-like material that evaporates when exposed to air, thus requiring no solvents. After additional experiments confirm that cyclododecane is the best facing option, it is hand-applied in 3 layers with a gauze membrane included between the second and third coating for added strength. And here I am showing you Perry Houston on site in the Pacific Palisades with Gary McGowan, who he brought on as an expert in the application of cyclododecane. And here they're heating up the cyclododecane. It had to be, it's wax-like, so it had to be heated to become liquid, and then that would make it easily applied to the surface of the wall painting. Here is Gary McGowan applying that gauze layer I spoke about between the second and third coatings of the cyclododecane. And here are technicians Ignacio Salcedo and Jay Ewert applying the gauze, cyclododecane over the gauze membrane for the third coating. The conservators then cover the face of the mural with protective plastic and padded plywood panels to prevent the cyclododecane from evaporating until the appropriate time. And here I'm going to show you the site again. These are the plywood panels. You can see that they're retrofitted with handles. These handles, they're hinged to the ceiling. The concept here was that the modularity was intended so that the conservators could look at the mural and its condition at any moment during the conservation phase to make sure that no changes were occurring to the actual painting. So it was a protective mechanism, but it also was an easy in and out access. To further ready the mural for transport, a steel beam platform was constructed beneath the garden portico. And here you can see the chief contractor, John Sullivan, on the right here, guiding in with one of his associates, guiding in one of the steel beams, I-beams that created a steel armature underneath the building to give it added strength and to also be the source from which we could lift the mural. We also, in order to prepare the foundation, we had to do some retrofitting, and here's another technician from the construction team using a diamond saw. We used many different kinds of diamond saws to make sure that there was minimal vibration, and the studies were being done all along, and it turned out that the vibration of the diamond saw in prepping the foundation was less than what the wrought iron garden gate did to going in and out of the compound did on a daily basis. So that was an interesting little factoid. The building's roof and cornices are removed to accommodate the underpasses along the freeway between Los Angeles and Santa Barbara, and a fourth wall is built to close up the open side of the building and to reinforce the existing wooden post and to just offer additional support. And lastly, the stucco walls were given added strength by putting a glass fabric wrap around the entire structure. And here you see Ignacio Salcedo and Jay Ewert putting that glass fabric wrap around the building as the final step in the Pacific Palisades. At sunrise on a beautiful, and we were working really early in the morning or late at night due to traffic patterns and whatnot in LA. At sunrise on a beautiful Southern California day in fall 2001 then, a professional house moving team arrived at the Amalfi Drive home with a massive crane and a lowboy tractor trailer. Crane operators gently pick up the mural building and carefully place it on the truck, after which it is sealed in plastic in order to further protect it from the elements. Here's the crane in question. We're lifting at this moment. There are many pictures of it, but in this moment, we're lifting it up over the landscaping. It's 25 tons that we're lifting up here, and it's coming over, going to the, whoops. I'm trying to show you that this is the existing landscaping, and we're lifting it over. This was a privacy fence. You can see the 9/11 that was. They were honoring 9/11 there. That was another, that just kind of places us culturally there and historically. So that's what it looked like. And of all the documents that we made, I mean, we made films, we did still photographs, but the next one I'm going to show you is absolutely one of my most favorite of all. This is the mural building traveling from Amalfi Drive, making its journey to Santa Barbara, and I just love the fact that it's crossing over the Sunset Boulevard overpass to the 405 freeway north, and it just looks like any other cargo in this moment, but for all of us, it's like our hearts were racing. It was really an exciting moment, like I observed the Getty team here felt when they were in front of their América Tropical. So it's an amazing thing when you're in that moment, and we all felt it too, a similar feeling. It arrives in Santa Barbara that same day, and it's discreetly stored in a facility for the evening, and then early the next morning, for the same reasons in Santa Barbara, traffic patterns and whatnot, we did it very early in the morning. The tractor trailer transports the structure up State Street, to which is Santa Barbara's main thoroughfare, to the museum, and it is then placed on its new foundation. This is the crane in Santa Barbara. It was even bigger. The crane for the work in Santa Barbara was even bigger because the span was greater. We had to move it further, so the crane had to be bigger. And so we're moving it across those two lanes. I'll show you the museum. You have to picture. Okay, this is the foundation that we built. So we moved the building with its foundation, but then we built another foundation. And what you have to picture, stand in front of the museum in State Street, and to the right of the museum's main entrance is where this space is. And we retrofitted the garden there, and then we built this foundation. And then we dropped the mural and guided it into place. Let me show you this here. Here they're guiding it into place. And it was like a choreography, really, watching the team move this. There were only 4 points of contact. The engineers had figured out how to lift the building and maneuver it with 4 points of contact, and it was just a choreography, a dance, watching how they maneuvered this 25-ton structure into place. The protective plywood panels and plastic wrap are immediately removed so the conservators can examine the artwork in detail. And it's a jubilant moment when Houston exclaims, "The move to Santa Barbara has been accomplished without causing any visible damage to the structure," end quote. The old and new foundations are then melded as a sand and concrete mix is filled in around the platform, and fresh stucco is applied to the outside of the building, and that was to create an even sturdier exterior, and then a new roof was put on. It looks like the old roof, but it's actually fireproof. It's a new material. It's actually a plastic material, but it's fireproof. And we put on new cornices, and we used the authentic bricks. The team had taken the original floor, had cataloged the exact location of every brick in the original floor, and they reconfigured that exactly as it was in the Pacific Palisades. They reconfigured that for Santa Barbara. And then the structure was sealed up again. And we left it secure for several months so the cyclododecane could evaporate. So it was opened up inside, but it was secured, you know, so no one could get in and out, but it was open enough so that the cyclododecane could evaporate. And once the evaporation process is complete, conservators remove the remaining gauze layer that was between the second and third coatings of cyclododecane. And here I'm showing you, this is Scott Haskins in the foreground removing the gauze layer. This is Perry Houston in the background removing the gauze layer. Here is Perry Houston's hands, a detail of him removing the gauze layer from the central image of the mother and child on the mural. And the conservators, again, at this point, after removing the gauze layer, they hand palpate the walls again. They compare their findings against the palpations that have been done in the Pacific Palisades before moving the mural. And it is determined that as a result of transport, no existing delaminations had increased in size and number, and there were no new delaminations. So the move at this point is considered a complete success. Previously identified separation pockets are wetted with alcohol and injected with Roplex AC33 by way of large hypodermic needles. And I'm showing you here Perry Houston in doing that injection process. The mural is then in-painted with reversible materials, watercolors, and golden colors. And I'm showing you here, again, this is Scott Haskin in the foreground working on the image of the mother, and then here is Perry Houston in the background doing the in-painting. Since applying an overall finish to the mural at this time is ruled out, no additional treatment steps are conducted at this time. The only final project steps include installing a state-of-the-art security system with video surveillance, wrought iron gates screened with bulletproof plexiglass, exhibition lighting, a guardrail, landscaping, and signage. On October 20th, 2002, 5 years after the first inkling of the Siqueiros mural project, Portrait of Mexico Today is unveiled to the public in a day-long celebration during which the museum premieres a documentary film it made on the project called For All to See, the Santa Barbara Siqueiros mural. And here I'm showing you an image from that day-long celebration of the public for the first time viewing the mural. In retrospect, one might still argue that the best outcome would have been to have left Portrait of Mexico Today in its original location, to be appreciated in its authentic context. In the United States, though, the right to own and manage individual property is one of the nation's highest and most sacred democratic ideals. Not surprisingly, then, tensions can arise between property rights and public interests on many fronts, and no less when works of art or pieces of cultural heritage are at stake in a residential setting. Since leaving Portrait of Mexico Today subject to future vagaries was unacceptable to both the owners of the mural and to the museum, what was the next best thing? It was moving the work and the building in which it was painted to an institution devoted to maintaining and exhibiting objects of permanent value. For the owners, this outcome guaranteed that the work would receive the proper ongoing professional care that it deserved. For the museum, it allowed for preserving an important piece of art and cultural heritage and making it accessible to the public. Case studies, both within and without Siqueiros' mural validate this conclusion. For years, as we've heard from Nestor, Siqueiros' plastic exercise, painted in 1933 in a private home in Buenos Aires, was subject to an uncertain fate. Another example pertains to murals by, as of yet, an unidentified artist in a historic house on the very same street in the Pacific Palisades as where Portrait of Mexico Today was created. A classic 1920s Mediterranean villa, this home at 1265 Amalfi Drive has been described, quote, as one of the great mansions to be built in the Palisades Riviera, with murals throughout the house and gardens, end quote. That this neighboring house and all its artistic content was torn down in 2010, well after Portrait of Mexico Today was moved, validates the fear the museum had for the Siqueiros mural, which was that it could be either painted over, dismantled and sold, left to decay, or outright destroyed by its new owners. Each of these scenarios point out that works of art created in residential settings can be and are subject to benign neglect and deliberate destruction. Concerning Portrait of Mexico Today, all the parties came together to ensure that it would not be at the risk of such abuses. If this meant taking the mural from its original site, but maintaining as much of its immediate context as possible, then this compromise was deemed worth it. Applying innovative strategies and revising purist notions of conservation and curatorial practice to the realities of home ownership are what saved Portrait of Mexico Today from future uncertainty. It was understood that, quote, sometimes the baby has to be halved. During the 1930s, the seclusion of Dudley Murphy's private home protected Portrait of Mexico Today from the kind of political censorship that befell the more open and accessible tropical America. But decades later, it was the institutionalized museum setting that provided a secure destiny for the mural. The Santa Barbara Museum of Art made Portrait of Mexico Today public so that it could be properly maintained and accessible for all to see. Thank you.